Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Sophie, and this channel is chronicling my journey to live my best life with multiple chronic conditions. Today is the video I wanted to post last week, but hadn't had a chance to make it. Today we'll be sort of walking through how I use my wearable Whoop, which I discussed in a previous video. I'll link that one down below, but it doesn't really go into a lot of detail. But I hope you guys find this helpful as to how I use sort of wearable technology to get a better idea of how my body is recovering. And with that, I will go into you guys can tell I just woke up. Sorry guys. I will go into the app and not gonna film an outro, so I will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye guys. After I wake up in the morning and the Whoop has given me a notification that it has calculated my recovery, I open up the app and I can see how long I slept. And what I will do is I will go into the health monitor and it will give me my overnight sleep metrics. What I'm basically looking at here, and the only thing I'm really interested in, is that resting heart rate that is on the middle left-hand side. Then once a month, I try to remember to come down to the lower right where it says share your health report, and it creates this nice little PDF file that you can zoom in on. Again, I normally just focus on the resting heart rate, so as you can see, I'm not quite sure what I was doing differently, but my resting heart rate has dramatically decreased for the past week, which I am very excited about. You can also look at your sleep duration, which I used to look a lot at, but now that I am taking medication to stay awake, you can see that there is no naps, which is what these darker parts at the top represent. And then down at the bottom, it gives you a longer 180-day report of the same thing that is up here. Then I will close out of both of those and just show you some more things I look at. I can swipe up and I can get some more metrics. Again, I don't really look at anything here. Under the strain, the only thing that is mildly interesting is this is your average daily heart rate. So this really is going to take into account if I've exercised or not, or whether I've just been sitting around all day. As you can see, on the days I work, I am basically just sitting around. But we can go back and look at the prior week when my heart rate wasn't as low, and I wasn't as recovered, and you can see my heart rate was much higher than it currently is. So I find that interesting. The other thing I do going into recovery, I know there's a lot of talk about HRV, but I haven't really found any correlation between my HRV and how I feel, so for the most part, I just ignore it. Again, I am interested in my resting heart rate, or my heart rate overnight while I am sleeping. It's been pretty stable this past week in the mid-60s, which is awesome. Because once again, if we go take a look at this week before, it was much, much higher. And this is the first week I started work, where you can see some nights my heart rate while I was sleeping was in the upper 70s. And I could tell. So those are the main things I look at every day. And I'm going to stop this recording and start another one so I can show you something in horizontal view. So here we are in the horizontal view. I'm actually going to swipe back quite a few days to show you what my heart rate was doing the first week I worked. So this is just a daily heart rate graph. This is one of the things I really like about the Whoop data. So if I zoom in here, you can see that the section on the left, I was sleeping and then I woke up. And you can see that my heart rate jumped quite a bit. I'm not going to be able to get exact since I am zoomed in, but from around 70 up to in the 140. So my heart rate doubled when I stood up and started moving, which is not a lot of fun. If you have experienced anything like that, I get quite short of breath and lightheaded when that happens. Now, if I come forward to this recent week, here you can see my heart rate's a lot more stable. It does increase quite a bit, for example, when I stand up, but for the most part, it is relatively stable during the day with no huge jumps, and that is what I like to see. One last thing I will show you that I use from the Whoop is this monthly performance assessment. I was hoping it was going to let me record in horizontal mode, but it does not, so I'm just going to have to zoom in on the pertinent parts. What I find really interesting is you can get sort of breakdown of sleep up at the top based on what they say your sleep need is versus how many hours you actually got. I don't really pay much attention to any of that or any of this type of stuff. What I really find interesting is down at the bottom, they ask you questions each day. It's sort of like a little diary thing. Whether or not, for example, whether or not you read in bed, and then it can correlate that with your metrics and say whether that has a positive or a negative impact on you, and just sort of says what the influence is on your recovery. So I find this really interesting just as you're changing lifestyle things or as you implement a new maybe bedtime routine, or as in my case, I went back to work. It will show you whether or not things have a positive impact. Intermittent fasting, for example, 30%. I'm trying to get down. So this is sort of new. They didn't originally break it down like this. So right here it's saying carbohydrates have a negligible impact, but if you really go down and look, you'll see it says 13 to 122 grams. I have a 3% positive impact, whereas if I have 125 to 440 grams, that has a negative 3% impact. And those little numbers in parentheses, the 10 and 11 times right there, is just how many times I've recorded the actual data. Because originally I was recording the data, but it wasn't breaking it apart like that. It was just giving you that negligible impact, which isn't helpful. So let's find some other things. So here, well, fats is negligible because my fat intake is pretty consistent. But here we are again with protein. So my proteins, when I get 10 to 56 grams, it's negative, but if 58 to 158 grams, it is positive. So it really does sort of validate what I have been saying, helps me feel more recovered, and it's just nice to sort of have some data that shows that, even if the data is not perfect by any means. I said this in my video about the Whoop, but the heart rate is not all that accurate. So if we come back and we look at yesterday, I did go for a walk yesterday, and I did record it on the Whoop as well as my Polar H10 heart rate monitor. And my average heart rate on the walk, according to my chest strap heart rate monitor, was 117. So 120 isn't off by too much, but my max heart rate was actually 151. So that's kind of a big difference. So since its heart rate data is off, its strain is going to be calculated incorrectly, which is based on heart rate. And then it uses that strain score to calculate your recovery, how much sleep you need. And then the recovery is based on your heart rate variability and such at night. So since this is so heart rate focused, and since its heart rate during activity is not great to say the least. I really just use it as more of an overall heart rate picture, as well as for those data points I showed you in the monthly performance assessment.